As a reporter, I'm going to blow other reporters' minds. YouTube does not distribute factual information. Let me say that again. YouTube does not distribute facts. So what does YouTube serve your eyeballs? It serves up the dominant cultural narrative. And YouTube not delivering facts, but the dominant cultural narrative is a slow-moving algorithmic tumor within the site that, left untreated, will kill YouTube like a tuberculosis patient. This site will be like a feeble man wasting away in a forgotten Alabama hospital because the dominant cultural narrative, that tumor, has convinced YouTube it is an advantage. So like a compound elbow fracture, this video comes to you in two parts: how YouTube dies and this important graph. But first, what is the dominant cultural narrative? The best way to imagine the dominant cultural narrative is a pack of big replicating cells within the body of YouTube that I call the Institutional Authoritative Sources, or the IAS for short. The IAS, the Institutional Authority Sources, are anything we can think of that broadly informs our opinion about the majority of the world. Society is just too complex for us to dive into detail about everything we want to understand. So instead, we rely on institutional authority sources. The IAS is CNN, and it's the CDC. The IAS is the American Psychiatric Association and the State Department. It's Fox News and the New York Times. It's Goldman Sachs analysts and the Catholic Church. And these institutional authoritative sources, which I've worked at a few of, have a chokehold on YouTube's bloodstream. That's why this video would get banned in January 2020. Hi guys, I know things are looking a little sketchy in China right now, and everything's safe in the United States. That's because our President Trump is keeping us safe, MAGA, but I'd still like to encourage everyone to go out and buy these. These are surgical masks, and they should be very good. This video gets promoted in 2021. Hey guys, it's been over a year of the pandemic, and we need not just one mask, but we need 2 masks, and we need 3 masks. I mean, I don't care to get the virus or not. I want so many masks that you are fully covered. This is the proper way, according to the CDC in 2020. All of this occurs because YouTube doesn't reflect facts. It reflects the dominant cultural narrative, and that's different than a fact. Facts are statements that are empirically true and generally really hard to verify. Facts often aren't immediately determinable. We like to believe they are, particularly reporters and journalists like me like to believe they are, but often they take years, decades, centuries even to arrive at. The truth doesn't move on a human timetable, but the dominant cultural narrative does, and the dominant cultural narrative is whatever the majority group believes is true and believes is in the best interest for society. Now, to be fair, the dominant cultural narrative trends factual, but only broadly so. There's a lot of margin underneath for rubbish and conjecture disguised as facts are true. And how accurate the dominant cultural narrative is, or if we imagine all the information we collectively know as the dominant cultural index of information, how accurate that is oscillates throughout time. There was a time in this country where witchcraft was widely believed to be true, or that common sense miasma was responsible for illness. Not that pesky, suspicious germ theory. Stamp out that misinformation. It's miasma. Bad air everywhere. Or the sun revolves around the earth. That's not true, but we all believed that for a long-ass time, and any authority we asked would have told us, yeah, that's true. Simply put, our collective conscious for what we believe is true and false isn't always true and false in hindsight. It's why in January 2020 saying, hey, consider a mask gets you banned off the site for harmful misinformation, and in January 2021, hey, you better wear 2 of these, because it's now the dominant cultural narrative. But when we can only share the dominant cultural narrative and not contrary opinions, even if they're factual or not, it pushes different perspectives off the site. Slowly at first, I admit, just the quacks like your second cousin, or the overt contrarians like your younger brother who's on about red pill, black pill, blue pills. It's just those weirdos at first that get pushed off the site. But over time, over years, the core hollows out. Like an apple, nothing there. More and more people leave to express their opinions on different sites, and people go to hear different perspectives on the world. So this is a pretty convincing problem, right? But why then does YouTube reflect the dominant cultural narrative and not facts? Partly heuristic. It's easier to determine the dominant cultural narrative than fact. The other half is the incentive structure. because when a dominant cultural group has an opinion about an idea, any contradicting opinion threatens the economics derived from that position. Like stating global warming is a hoax threatens the variety of startups and electric companies and NGOs that derive tax breaks and donations from the public. Oppositely, saying global warming is an existential threat to humanity threatens the economics of oil companies and large multinationals that trade on crop futures. There are many institutional authoritative sources that will guarantee one or the other opinion is fact, but that's not really true. Any insanely smart person on this subject, and they will tell you the truth is only time will tell. But YouTube doesn't have that luxury. It's got to pick a side to amplify as accurate and suppress as misinformation. Which leads me to the second part of this video, this graph, this 4-quadrant Cartesian coordinate of reality. Because reporters like to tell you that truth is simple. It's either a fact or fiction, truth or lie. But reality is a little more murky. It's really a 4-quadrant system. You have harmless truths, harmless lies, harmful lies, and harmful truths. Harmless truths are the rate of gravity, 9.8 meters per second squared. And harmless lies are the Earth is flat. Society doesn't really care that some people believe the Earth is flat. A harmful lie, though, is that the election was stolen through massive voter fraud. That's not true and weakens the pillars of our democracy far into the future, where people start mistrusting the democratic process. But what about harmful truths? Harmful truths are tricky. They're anything from maybe Woody Allen is innocent, or it was not necessary for the United States to drop 2 nuclear bombs on Japan to end World War II. In fact, the reality is we killed hundreds of thousands of innocent Japanese to send a signal to the Soviet Union that we were stronger than them, so that we could enact our foreign policy after World War II. That's a harmful truth. Another harmful truth in January 2020 was wearing a mask. Because remember, harmful is a perspective. Harmful is defined by whatever the IAS, institutional authoritative sources, view as harmful to their economic status and to the collective public good. Telling people to wear a mask in January 2020 was a harmful truth because it took eyeballs away from the IAS to other sources, hurting their economic bottom line, and 2, it could also lead to a shortage of PPE to the medical professionals that needed it. But these harmful truths, however you may feel about them, are really important. This quadrant is really important because harmful truths are often responsible for the big shifts in technology and cultural equality. Like, I know the religious texts don't say anything about dinosaurs, but we've carbon dated their bones and they far predate whatever said in this religious book. Or, sorry psychiatrists, but homosexuality is not a mental illness. Both of those were considered harmful truths at their time. And this inability to express harmful truths, but allowed to express harmless lies on YouTube, will eventually push the best and brightest minds away from sharing their information on YouTube. It's as if YouTube tells us it's okay to be wrong as long as nobody powerful or with authority disagrees with us. But if you're right, and even if you can prove you're right, if institutional authority disagrees with you, we're going to punish you for that. You're allowed to spread harmless truths and harmless lies on YouTube, but harmful lies and harmful truths, YouTube punishes you for sharing. Like, I can share my story about how I was
YouTube word censored
with a toothbrush at Benihana, but if my friend makes a response video challenging my narrative that I was
YouTube word censored
brush after eating fried rice, that's disbelieving
YouTube word censored
victims, and that's culturally bad. That goes against the dominant cultural narrative, and therefore my friend, who's actually speaking a truth, is suppressed. Increasingly on YouTube, you're not allowed to be correct and have the dominant cultural narrative disagree with you. And as that trend continues, YouTube's utility as a reservoir for valuable information will evaporate. So what can YouTube do to fix this issue? I'm not sure it can, partly because of its size and scale. Because YouTube is essentially the only video platform, it's always the target for the IAS's ire. I know, I've been in newsrooms where they call up YouTube and berate them for spreading misinformation. And YouTube doesn't have the willpower to dispute institutional authority sources on every subject, nor should we expect it to. We can see this by them choosing to remove Alex Jones videos or election fraud videos or QAnon videos, which are probably collectively good. I mean, those are lies, but them also removing PewDiePie videos, demonetizing H3H3 podcasts, or removing medical videos that were actually correct about COVID-19. They were just ahead of the dominant cultural narrative. The only way I can see YouTube treating this cancer of being attached to the dominant cultural narrative is to retreat back into the open prairie of an open marketplace of ideas. Truth or lie, harmful or harmless, doesn't matter, anything goes. Except I don't think society actually wants that. Because between you and I, the marketplace of ideas, as classical utilitarians like John Stuart Mill defined it, doesn't actually gear for the best idea. It selects for the fittest idea. And often the fittest idea is just the idea that is best fitted to easily enter and communicate between human brains. Like religion is a more fit idea for human-to-human transmission than some murky concept about quantum uncertainty and random evolutionary biology. I'm not saying whether they're true or false, merely that religion is a more fit idea for human-to-human transmission than spooky quantum physics. It's a paradoxical problem. How does YouTube allow problematic truths but stop dangerous lies in real time? I don't know. Nobody knows. So YouTube just promotes the dominant cultural narrative and silences everything on either side of it. But that decision will eventually kill it. That's how and when YouTube dies. Thank you for watching. If you like this video and want more complex discussions about ideas and media and tech, please support me on Patreon. YouTube doesn't like my videos and so suppresses them. LOL irony. Like, subscribe. Catch you guys in the next video. Bye.